One of the things you'll be doing in this class that's new is C++. And in order to do that, we need a place to code C++. And the tool we're going to use is Visual Studio. And this is the 2019 version of Visual Studio. I installed the Community Edition, which is free. Because I could. We do have keys available in the department. There's information on that out there. We'll talk about that more. But it's already installed on my machine, so I figured I'd, to have a video that just jumps into using this. Now I'm working on something later on in the class, so I actually have a solution inside of here. But once you get into Visual Studio, you typically are going to start by creating a new project of some sorts. So this will be open up, and what you have here is going to depend on the options you selected while you installed it. So this is my C projects. I have an empty project, console app, desktop app. There's many different projects here. Most of the time, we'll deal in a console app. You can go from scratch. There's just no starting files here. I like the console app because it gives me a startup file to go with it. You can give it the name. You can give it the location. Notice I have mine on a different drive, my C++ folder on a separate drive. You can talk about adding to a solution, creating a new solution. There's other options here we're not going to get into in much detail. The most important thing is the name. And so this is going to be welcome to VS. Oops, let's do capital 2 VS. Welcome to Visual Studio. Again, you name it whatever you want to based off the project you're working on. Now, once I create the project, it's actually going to replace the one out here. So you notice the one I was working on, it goes away. I'll be straight honest. I do not work in C++ all that often. I don't work in Visual Studio all that often. I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert. And there's going to be other resources out there you can get better at it. I'm going to show you the bare minimums that you need to do the type of work that I'm going to be asking you to do. So for those of you who've worked on this more and know it, yes, you can roll your eyes or you can tell people, yeah, it's absolutely true. This video is going to cater to all of us brand new people who are working on it. We can't all be experts in everything all the time. I once was an expert in ADA programming, and I haven't used it in 20 years, and I don't really know what the tool names are anymore for it. But I coded in Java every day for 2 decades, so I know a lot about that tool set and such. So anyway, so just know that there's always limits to our knowledge, and because other people don't know things doesn't mean they don't know something else you don't know. But now we have it. We have an app. It's up. It's running. It gives us the Hello World app to get started with, and we'll dive into lots of C++ syntax along the way. But right now we're just looking at the tool. So at this point, since we created that console app, I can actually run it right away. Now notice, it says local Windows debugger when I go have to run things. So I can do remote things, I can do local things. But this is not Java. It's not write once, run anywhere. I always have to tie to whatever machine I'm on when I'm dealing with a language like C. So when I run this, it doesn't run in some little convenient console right here. It's not convenient. It's actually going to run it in a command prompt window. That's what I set it up to be. So you can see it ran hello world. That's the code right there. I just moved it here. The hello world printed out right there. And it says, yes, it exited with code 0. It did its job. And then you can see I can automatically close it by going to set some tools, or I can leave it open if I want to see what happened. Obviously, I left mine unconfigured. A lot of apps we run will print out stuff. We can leave it open to see what happens, but I press a button and it goes away. So very, very simple startup to Visual Studio for the application. Let's say I want to have multiple lines inside of here. Just to show you, it's there, it runs, it does its thing. It starts up on my other screen, which I have to drag that over every time because I'm sharing 2 screens. But here, hello, first, second, I can deal with my code instantly. It allows me to debug by default. Notice it says local Windows debugger. So if I add a breakpoint in here, it automatically will stop wherever that is. Now I add the breakpoint, I can come over on all the way to the leftmost side here, not the buttons, not the numbers, anything over here, all the way to the leftmost side. The little red circle tells me there's a breakpoint. I can also right click and say breakpoint, insert breakpoint. or insert trace point or other features of the debugger. We'll deal with debugging more as we go along. But when I run that, at this point, it starts up and then it will stop. You see, it didn't print anything out yet because it hit this breakpoint. You can see the yellow arrows tell me where it's at. So now up along this corner right here, it might vary on where it's on your screen depending on your window size, but there's the red to stop debugging. This is an important button to remember. If you screw up your code in some way, it will have that window be going crazy or become stuck or become frozen or whatever. You cannot get out of it. You can hit the close button here, but if I can't do anything here, and actually, by the way, another important hint is if you click on here, you can actually freeze your program because you clicked on here as well. That's a little feature of Windows command line prompt. But if I close this, notice nothing happened. It didn't go anywhere. Sometimes the only way to kill your application is to hit the stop debugging button, which then does wipe it out, makes it all go away for you. So I can run my local debugger again. And again, it's frozen at this spot. So now I have the restart, which will rerun the debugging, or I can say show next statement, or I can say step into, or I can say step over, or I can say step out. And each of these have function keys that are associated with it as well. So I'm going to do a step over because I don't care about the operator for the standard out. And I can do step over. And now notice, hello, second, and then I do step over one time, it gets me to third. But it's not finished the program yet because I haven't finished past that next line, so I have to step over one more time, and then it gives me all of this stuff, and then the bugging goes away. So running applications is pretty straightforward, but you do need to be aware of some of those little features. The debug menu also has some of the same information. You can start debugging. You can start without debugging here. If you don't want debugging to run, but notice it runs by default in debugging mode. That's the opposite of some other tool sets. And most of the Java tools I work with, the run runs without debugging. You have to explicitly choose to debug. That's not what happens inside of Visual Studio. Okay, so get rid of my breakpoint here. A couple of the little things I wanted to show you. Obviously, if you you put compiler's error there, it shows up like most IDEs do. You can see it gives you the little red underline because in C++ it's not Java, it's C++. String is a lowercase thing. Now here, notice string is unidentified. Well, another strange thing about C++, we have to include much more than we would in a language like Java or Python. The default stuff that's available in those languages, I often have to add myself. Okay, well, I've included it. It still doesn't like it. What the heck's going on? Well, notice up here the std : You might not have thought about it beforehand. You might just have said, well, that's just some sort of crazy syntax for the print, right? And yes, it's crazy syntax, but breaking down what it means is important. The std is the namespace. So if I put std string inside of here, it works, it's happy, it doesn't, no trouble. It's kind of a pain to have to put this above everything. Copy and paste, sure. The way you get around that is using namespace. You can see the code complete things as I type, but you have to typically, in most cases, you have to press the down key or some other way of getting to that before you hit enter and puts that together. But I can say using namespace std, which is an unfortunate acronym, standard is what it stands for. At that point, I can actually not have to put the standard in front of it anymore. So that, that is another quick getting started sort of basic C++ thing to have happen. So now I didn't really do anything to change my output, but my program runs, it's happy, it's fine. Again, one of those things that I'm slightly newer at with C++ that I've found to be notable in Visual Studio. Let me just be clear. I've coded C many, many times. It's been probably a year and a half since from the time of this video since I last taught a class that involved C++. So it's not something I work on regularly. And that's why I've reinforced this idea of long-term knowledge. If you don't do something regularly, you tend to forget it. So I pick it up quickly because it's there, but my habits are jump out of my head. So you might regularly see me code Java in C++ and then fix it later on, or Python or whatever other language I might be using at the time. But anyway, um, I wiped out some of those comments here just to give my brain a little bit clean space. The one thing that does happen occasionally is Visual Studio doesn't seem to catch all compiler errors as well as some other languages do. Java, Ada, it behaves a little bit more at times, kind of like a JavaScript, where some of the errors aren't caught until you run it. So sometimes you will run your code, and we'll see examples of this as we move forward, and your code will not run because you'll get a compiler error here. It's annoying, especially if you're used to Java compilers that are better, but you just have to look for the line number and then go up and fix the code from there. It'll normally tell you what's going on. It's kind of old school that way. But it's just another thing to be aware of, that maybe this little mention will jog your memory and help you look for it there before you have to reach out and ask for help. But you can always go off and reach out and ask for help. All right, well, there's a quick introduction to working within and getting a project set up in Visual Studio. Um, you're going to see this tool a ton through the videos as we go through, and you can always reach out for questions, but at least you know how to get up and get running.